Yeah, okay, I can see your screen.
Okay, you know what? I think there is an issue with okay. Okay. Can you see the box that has the yep,
I've
there you
just clicked it.
perfect. Okay. So you'll have access, you'll be able to click through it, you'll be able to see any of the, you'll be able to drive any of the slides moving forward, so I don't need to do that on my end. And then as far as questions goes, I will ask everyone to have questions hold till the end. I will facilitate the questions. So the questions will go to the organizer, which is me.
Yep.
As those go through towards the end, I will facilitate and ask you, and then you can answer those questions.
Yeah, great. Oh, by the way, the webinar is live. I've just got some people who've just joined.
Yep, so, oh, you know why? Because it just started. Yep, okay. So, if anyone is listening at the moment, I'm not sure how the webinar already began, but we're just going to figure out a couple small logistics. We'll get started in the next couple minutes. So thank you to everyone. GoToWebinar, I think, is maybe having a couple technical issues, so we will make sure that that is all figured out moving forward. So thank you to you all and Alicia, who are being very patient in this process. And we're also very excited to hear about your webinar. So Alicia, do you have any other questions? I'm also happy to kind of begin, now, and we can always have people sort of join in the next few minutes. This will be recorded. What would you prefer?
I'm happy to wait. I'm all good to go.
Okay, lovely. So I think I'm going to give everyone just a few more minutes to get some people who got the email to have it start at 5. It's 4:52 at the moment, so why don't we have it start at the top of 4:55, and I'll introduce everyone, and then we'll get started. Okay, everyone, I think we are going to get started. Alicia, are you all ready to go?
I sure am.
Lovely. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I know this is a little bit of a bumpy start, but thank you to everyone who has already joined. I see that we have several more people that have joined us, but we promise it will be absolutely worth it. So, good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on another session of We Connect Academy's Learning from Women Leaders series around the world. My name is Sarah, and I'm very, very happy to introduce Alicia Beachley. Alicia is a marketing brand activist specialist with 20 years of industry experience that is focused on making great ideas happen. Her mission is to create action-driven marketing campaigns for brand and marketing teams across Australia. Alicia started marketing services agency April 5 over 12 years ago, which specializes in brand activation, experiential marketing, events, and PR. The agency proudly works with national and global brands such as Microsoft, H&R Block, TABCorp, Rimmel, Intel, and Covergirl. I'll let Alicia introduce herself and talk more, but I would like to remind all the attendees that you are in listen-only mode. So if you have any questions, please write them down, note them down in your head, and please put them in the chat boxes, and we will make sure to read them out loud once the webinar is completed. You can either put those in during the webinar and we'll do it at the end, or you can wait till the end. Either way, we'll make sure that all of those questions get answered by Alicia. While this webinar will be recorded, this is a one-time chance to actually ask questions and learn from all the experience that she brings. So we very much encourage you to ask as many questions as possible. As mentioned, like I had said, the webinar will be recorded after the session and will be emailed to everyone here as well as everyone who registered. So it'll also be available on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much again, Alicia, for being here with us today, and I will kick it over to you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for the opportunity. Welcome, everyone. So I think I've probably got some people from Australia in our time zone, so it's almost 8 o'clock in the morning, so having coffee, and then also at the end of the day, I think in other parts of the world as well. I think it's about 5 p.m. So what I wanted to do today was spend a little bit of time talking about brand engagement, why it's important, how to drive results out of it, and I guess also to show you some research and really show you some of the changing landscape that in this market that we've got happening at the moment. So, what to expect over the course of the next sort of 45 minutes or so. And as Sarah said, I really do encourage questions. I'm happy to answer them. I'm happy to answer them online. If you've got something offline that you wanted to touch base with me, I'm really happy to be able to assist as well there. So, I mean, Sarah's sort of given you a little bit about us, a little bit about us, but I'll also just sort of cover that as well. Exactly what is brand engagement? Why does it matter? How the modern customer looks, and I think with bricks and mortar and technology these days, things are definitely changing. I want to take you through a couple of case studies of work that we've done in two very different clients and also in two very different ways to show you how to bring to life brand engagement. And then, importantly, the measurement around brand engagement, because at the end of the day, it's how we measure it, it's the ROI. It also helps us keep coming back and doing more and more and more of these types of campaigns. And I guess the really important thing to note here too is that what we're talking about is it doesn't matter what the size of the organization is, it doesn't matter whether it's a corporate client, it doesn't matter whether it's your business, it's all about the philosophy of brand engagement and the fact that brand engagement is really very much a strategy, and it can be implemented within your own organizations, for your clients, and whether you are a service or a product or anything that it is that you do, these principles apply regardless. So, as Sarah mentioned, we're a brand activation agency. We've been doing this for 12 years. We're very different things to very different clients. So, what we create for Microsoft might be completely different to what we do for H&R Block. Again, in snack brands, we have very different types of campaigns that get done. We have different specialists within the agency. But as a core of the basis of the work that we do, there's events, experiential marketing, promotions and incentives, trade retail, PR comms, design, creative, point of sale. And I guess this type of work is very much the non-traditional marketing. So, your traditional marketing sits with your radio, TV and print. We basically do everything else that's not that. So, you know, we specialise in this engagement, in how to actually connect with consumers, in how to try and get consumers to act, in how to try and get consumers to, you know, buy your product, have an emotional connection with your product, and then continue that engagement through not just the you know, the one purchase, but the whole life cycle of the brand as well. So let's dive straight into it. So as I mentioned, brand engagement is a process of forming an emotional commitment between a consumer and a brand. And you know what we're really trying to do here is get that commitment and get that emotional connection. And as we move away from this very traditional advertising where you'd watch something on TV, you'd go out and buy it because so-and-so told you to do that, it's very, very different these days. So, you know, once upon a time it was super easy. These days it's just not easy. So you have so much, it's almost like a barrage of technology being able to confront you with, you know, so many opportunities. It's really about the brands that can stand out. It's really about the brands that are creating that emotional connection and how they're doing that, which is what I want to take you through today as well, but how they do that to continue that relationship. So that relationships and that engaged consumer accounts for such a higher and significant proportion of sales. So, you know, our utopia is getting someone to be fully engaged with your brand, to love your brand, to have a connection with your brand. And as I said, it doesn't necessarily need to be a brand on a supermarket shelf. It can be your brand as a service or a product. Why does it matter? Why does brand engagement matter? And I think this is some really interesting stats that I want to take you through this morning as well. So 3/4 of consumers say that customer experience is an important factor in the decision to buy, just beyond price and quality. I mean, once upon a time, it was all about price. You used to walk down the supermarket shelf again and you'd go, okay, something's on special, I'll buy that. And then you'd have a band which you would generally purchase from. So it was sort of the high end, the medium and the low end. And, you know, depending on what was on special, you'd buy that brand. And those brands are very much the commodities of today. And, you know, for those brands, it's how do you, you know, how do you actually try and find some form of engagement? How do you make it different? How do you differentiate between your competitors in the marketplace? So, you know, and what we also see that good experience leads to people trying to pay or willing to pay a premium. And, you know, this is where we're seeing that if you do create that emotional connection and that, you know, that kind of bond between your brand, then people will pay a premium for it. Fully engaged customers deliver 23% premium over an average customer in share of wallet, profitability and revenue. So, I mean, as we say in the first point, they're willing to pay a premium and they'll deliver 23% more premium. Increased customer retention rates by 5% could increase profits from 25% to 95%. And I mean, this is the Harvard Business Review stat. And you know what's really scary about that? If you can actually increase the retention, so it's your customers coming back. And how do you do that? If you've got an engaged customer and an engaged brand with an emotional connection, they're just going to come back over and over and over again. They're also going to talk about your product, share your product. And they're also going to almost become advocates and brand ambassadors for your product. Engaged consumers buy 90% more frequently, spend 60% more transactions per 60% more per transaction, and are 5 times more likely to indicate it is the only brand that they would purchase in the future. All of these factors lead to engaged customers delivering 3 times the value to the brand over the course of a year. And this is some really scary stats there. So, you know, buying 90% more frequently. So, you know, we know that there are all sorts of different shop types now. So again, if I'm using a supermarket as an example, people go in there to stock up, to top up, or for an occasion shop. So, you know, if they're going straight into the supermarket, buying your brand on the frequency that they're doing these days, which is probably a few times a week, as opposed to that one big shop at the end of the week, as that used to be the traditional way to do it, there's more likelihood to go and buy the premium brand, the fresh brand, the brand that they engage with, the brand that they've got an emotional connection with. And there are so many opportunities for us as marketers to be able to engage with them in all sorts of different ways. And let's talk a little bit about the modern customer. And I think this is really interesting. And this is a real shift from, where we used to be 15, even 5 years ago. And there are 6 areas and 6 pillars of this customer experience excellence. And I think, where this is some stats and recent work that's been done by KPMG. And it's really interesting and something that we're finding in all of the work that we're doing as well. So personalization, time and effort, resolution, integrity, expectations, and empathy. So personalization, this is all about using individualized attention to drive emotional connection. So there are lots of brands that you see that are personalizing now. I mean, the Daily Edit here in Australia who personalizes and monograms products. Really simple things that can be done to do personalization. So whether it's, a personal connection by simply monogramming, or, we've also seen Nutella putting names on Nutella jars for Christmas. This personalization is becoming something that is way more than any sort of market would ever dream about. So, there are so many different brands being able to showcase different brands, different products. We've got something here again in Australia, Kit Kat, and a chocolate bar around the world, but we've got a store now in which is all around personalization. So you could go into this store in one of our major shopping centres, and it's a dedicated Kit Kat store where you can take your favourite flavours, your favourite toppings, and you can create and personalise this Kit Kat to make it something that is unique and your own. And this store was born from a small pop-up, which was a small experiential campaign done by an agency and a, fairly risky marketer. They decided to do something completely different, completely away from, trying to sell product. Because I know, again, their product in the supermarket's a commodity. So how are they going to build some personalization around their products? So, now they have a pop-up store here in Australia. They have several, and they're looking at several other models to do the same type of thing. Time and effort, minimizing customer effort and increasing frictionless process. This is another really key pillar. You've got to make it easy for consumers. Consumers are time poor. They haven't got time or energy to have things that are made hard. And I mean, you may have seen this if you're doing a customer survey where you're entering a competition, you're doing something, you want it to be effortless and seamless. You don't want to be put on hold for half an hour. You don't want to be able to move. You don't want to be bounced from person to person to person when you're calling your bank because you just need to be able to get an answer on something that's gone wrong. So this is about the time that they put in and the effort. And I think this instant gratification marketplace world that we live in now, where our phones and technology has enabled us to become so have everything so instantly, it means that our product and services have also got to keep up. So making it super easy to engage and creating that real frictionless process is really critical. Resolution, turning a disappointing experience into a great one. And this is where a lot of brands and services fall short. And I think, from a simple Facebook review and if it was a negative review, how that's handled, how you manage it, how you turn that negative into an absolute positive. And sometimes you just can't. Sometimes there are those people out there, those consumers out there that are just going to be that person that makes it very difficult for you, your brand, your service. Whereas if you do have an issue, how you handle it is so critical. If you do it in a timely manner, with empathy, with acknowledging the problem, with a resolution that satisfies both you as a service and or product, and also the consumer, you'll basically turn a negative into a positive. But you'll also create a fan. And quite often when you've got these situations that happen, these people who are super disappointed about something, the way that it's handled can actually become your biggest fan. And that goes back to, integrity, being trustworthy and engendering trust. I think it's super important as brands and services that we are trustworthy, that our consumers, the people who buy from us, the people that engage with us, actually know that we are that we have integrity, that we act with integrity, that, everything from our ethical sourcing to our, sponsoring, and I know something that I do a lot, looking at, I'm a We Connect certified member. How can I continue to, engage in this community as well? How can I continue to, pay it forward? So acting with integrity, acting with the best interest, everyone needs to be able to be profitable, but everyone wants to be treated in a fair and equitable manner. And also everyone wants to have, to be known that an organisation acts with integrity. Expectations, and I think this is another thing which is really, closely linked to resolution and turning disappointing experience into great ones. So, managing and meeting and exceeding customer expectations. And this is where you also can get great fans too. If you're doing something that's a little bit out of the ordinary, or, just the fact that you are meeting expectations, because there are so many brands and so many products that just don't meet expectations, and consumers, just get disappointed really easily. But if you're one of the ones that are stand out, and whether it's your customer service, whether it's your execution, whether it's your creative, whether it's your product, whatever it is, it's managing and meeting those expectations and doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it is just such a critical part to that. And then empathy, and I guess from empathy, it's just starting to understand the customer's circumstances to drive the deep rapport. And, sometimes we don't know what's happening on the other end of the phone. We don't know what's happening with our consumers. We don't know what's motivating them. So again, I believe empathy is highly linked to integrity, and you need to act with empathy, and you need to be, sometimes as brands, I think we forget to be a little bit vulnerable as well. And if we have made a mistake, we need to own up to that mistake. If we are causing something that is creating havoc and impacting on time and effort, then we need to call it out, acknowledge it, move on, and try and help and support. So, to go back over these pillars of customer experience, the really interesting thing is, this personalization, as we see, we're talking about that from a trend perspective, that sits at 22%, of experience customer excellence. So, our second one sits at 17%, which is time and effort. So, personalization, but make it easy for me. And then closely followed by, expectations. My expectation is that this is going to be the right product, the right service, and it's going to meet my expectations. And then, following on from that, we have resolution, and then we have, integrity, empathy, and resolution. So, this is an Australian survey done by KPMG, but I think it relates anywhere globally too. That, it is the number one driver as far as, what we're thinking about. So I guess we all need to think about how we can personalize our own experiences for each of our customers in whichever market and product or service that we're creating. So again, a little bit about the modern customer, a human touch, and this is also some really interesting stats. And I think where this comes to play too is that, whilst technology is a critical part of, how we engage, it's a pathway for us. But if you look at people who, the stats around this human connection, and, we talk a lot about in our agency that, you can't buy a perfume online. So how are we going to be able to create an experience where a customer can evoke some sort of, sense, whichever sense it is, of all the senses that there are. But, you need to smell a perfume, you need to experience a perfume. And, if you think back to all those incredible experiences that we've all had in our lives, there's a reason, that we've all got the memories, and these form part of our expectations around some of our brands and some of our, the way we interact with our brands. But again, taking Australia, for example, 81% of people would prefer a human versus an automated interaction. And that goes down to a customer service. We don't want to sit there and talk to bots. We actually want to, while bots are great, we actually want to be able to have a human interaction. And, if we're talking about the States, 82% of customers want that human interaction. I want to interact with a real person who has, more as technology improves. And the more we see with technology, the more availability we have with technology, and the more, there is at our fingertips. It's really interesting that consumers are actually begging for human interaction, and that poses a real challenge for us, for brands, and for the way that we create the strategy around some of the engagement that we have to do. Because when you do engage with when you have to employ humans to interact, and we see that it can become a really costly exercise. And if we are creating an activation that gives an opportunity for people to interact, it's about where we go, how we show up, the numbers of people that we can interact with to make the ROI, to change that model so that, we're in the best place that we can be, in the most cost-effective way that we can be, showing up as the brand that we want to be, potentially personalizing an experience, and taking into account all of the strategy around, what we want to do, but creating those human experiences. And some of these things can be really simple as well, but, the human experience across the board, UK 80%. So, it's really critical to remember that, whilst we have technology, it is only a pathway to create an opportunity to have a human experience. And this is where you really start to build your loyalty, and this is where you really start to build your engagement. So as I mentioned, experience is a strategy. Customers just want great experience with their brands. But, as we see, and if you think about the brands that you interact with, we don't necessarily get them. How we show up as a brand, how we show up as, and whether that's our own brands. And I think about some of the internal work that we're doing in our agency now. It's really easy for us to do all this work for our clients, but whether we do this work for ourselves as well, it's just as important, because people make, we say first impressions count. We know that a consumer, it's within 2 to 3 seconds where they walk down a supermarket aisle and they make a decision around a product. So if you're giving consumers too much information, then it gets too confusing. They're so, again, time poor. They reach for a traditional, which is where they've previously purchased, or they reach for something that they know that has good quality, or they've got some sort of engagement with. So I think about, when we do create campaigns, how we create them, how we bring them to life, has to involve, it's almost a science, it's an alchemy around, creating all these different elements that will create the perfect campaign. And we also know when we're doing sweepstakes and competitions and consumer related promotions, that only 1 in 8 of those promotions is successful. And we know that, from deep research, that, in some of the campaigns that we create, if we don't get some of those very simplistic models correct, and that might just be something like, 3 prices instead of 1, and because we know that, consumers don't ever believe psychologically that they're going to win 1 prize, whereas they always think, there's 3 prizes, oh, I might have a chance of winning. It's around choice for a consumer as well. They like to know that, they don't want to be told that they're going to be getting something. They like to think about choice. They like to be given a choice. They like to be able to choose, the prizes that they can potentially win. So through the use of research, through the use of, through our experience and through the work that we're doing with our brands, this experience becomes a strategy. And how we create good experiences, the difference between that engagement and then creating that emotional connection. I wanted to take you through a couple of case studies now. So Covergirl is an international brand, and I know over in the States there's a Covergirl. In New York, I believe there's a Covergirl store, and it's a multi-level store, and you can go in there and have the same sort of experiences that we tried to create. So Covergirl, which is part of the Coty brand, came to us over, this is about a 12-month-old campaign now. They're doing a complete rebrand. So they had gone from almost like sort of a supermarket brand, mumsy kind of, forgotten brand. Their packaging wasn't vibrant. There was nothing around what they were doing in our marketplace in particular that, their sales were dying. They're also competing with other brands in the stable and then just not having any cut through. So there was a complete rebrand, and when the clients came to us, they said we wanted to create an experience. So how do we create an experience that shows everyone, you know, what this product's about, showcases the new packaging, showcases the new, you know, what you can do with the products, because everyone's forgotten about this brand. So we created a series of pop-ups. So these pop-ups are in shopping centres. Covergirl is, sorry, in this we did probably, I think there was about 10 different activations across 10 different shopping centres, across 3 different cities, across various different locations. So as you can see, the brand became it was very black and white. It's almost Sephora-esque in its packaging. So we created various different touch points within this activation. So makeovers are really easy to do. So we created the look and feel. So come engage with us, come and find out, see what the brand's like, let us do a makeover on you. But then we decided to take it 1 and then 2 steps further. So what we were trying to showcase here is, you know, the difference that this makeup can make, and, you know, by simply applied, what you can do and how you can look, and then how you can showcase this on social media. So what we did then is we created a fun interactive stand. We offered the makeovers, but then what we also did is there was a professional photo booth experience. So you could actually, once you were made over, you would go into the photo booth, which, as you can see, had the black and white packaging behind it. We then created you a Covergirl billboard. So in all of our shopping centres that we were activating in, so we take a photo, and then, you know, with the consumer's consent, we took that photo and then it was put up onto a billboard in the shopping centre. So we ended up having this rolling series of fantastic photos of these super, you know, fabulous looking women and men who came into our stand, had their makeovers. So, you know, I think we're talking about various different levels of engagement here. And then we had an overlay where you could be emailed the photograph of you. It was branded Covergirl, the hashtag I am what I make up. We had competition running so that you could, you know, go in the draw to win certain elements. We had the hashtag running where I am what I make up, so you could post your images up on the hashtag as well. We also then had the billboards going, and then we also had the social media shareable component too. So at any point you could come to our stands, you could engage with us. Now for something like this, we started at 9 o'clock in the morning, we went through 9 o'clock at night. We had people lining up, just to have their makeup done, which was, you know, the ones who were a little bit unsure about, you know, being put up on billboards, not necessarily wanted to do it, but you know, you could engage at various different levels. So, but the longevity of the campaign from here, we then created a database, and then we built a very highly engaged customer series of brand ambassadors that we've now got, that we engage with constantly, that we talk to, that try new product. So again, it's thinking about, you know, we want to showcase the makeup, we want to showcase the change of brand, we want to showcase what we're doing in the marketplace, but how can then we create an experience for our customers and an experience for our consumers that creates the longevity? So, you know, this is what we were constantly thinking about in creating this. So, you know, 12 months down the track, we've got these, you know, incredibly engaged ambassadors. They've sent new product, they're trying different things for us, they're commenting, they're reporting, they're you know, feeding back to us about NPD, they're feeding back to us about, you know, different things that they want to see in the marketplace. And, you know, it just, for something like a brand like Covergirl, which is competing against, again, so many other cosmetics brands, it's how do we create cut through, how do we create that gives the consumers engagement, that gives them an emotional connection. The next one I want to talk about is something completely different. This is an event. So, you know, we've gone from an experiential campaign, and as I said to you, we, as I mentioned in the very beginning, that we create events, we create experiences, we create promotions, we create, you know, experiential marketing. You know, many of our campaigns have got a digital social element. You know, it's not the key, but it is, again, something that we do to amplify the campaigns that we work on. So this campaign, Microsoft Future Now, so this was Microsoft's flagship event for 2019. This was done earlier on in March. So when we were putting this campaign together, it was all around engaging with business audiences. So this is high-end business decision makers. We're talking C-level people, so technology, but also CEOs, CMO, CIO, and it was really about Microsoft, and where previously they had shown up with product and new product services and announcements, this was something a little bit different. This is Microsoft's foray into how do we create an experience for our consumers that showcases our technology, but is not all around, oh, we've got a new version of Windows, or we've got a new computer that we're launching. And how do we engage with our various audiences? So we're specialists in health, we're specialists in financial, so how do we engage with various different audiences through a series of events? So this was a one-day event, as I said earlier on this year, and what we created was this all-inclusive it was about 600 people who came along to it in the end, but it was this opportunity to engage with Microsoft, where we had our MD and one of our vice presidents from the States come over as well. We were talking about things that are important right now. We were talking about cyber security. We were talking about, personalization. We were talking about, how to, what Microsoft's position is around so many of these critical things that are happening in this marketplace right now. So data protection. And I mean, this was a slight shift from Microsoft, and it was really an incredible event to create. So what we also did is we had an experience zone. So as part of this series of events, we had this experience zone where consumers could, and our decision makers could go and then experience and see technology live. They could see, for example, we are doing a whole lot of work here in Australia about keeping our trains on time, and Microsoft are the technology through their AI technology, their learning technology and their intelligence. They're actually working out how to keep trains on time. They're tracking data. They're working out why trains aren't necessarily turning up on time, what's causing the issues. So they're using all of this data, they're creating all of this data. So we wanted to showcase this as a case study. And so we actually created a mini model of trains that went around this track, and then, computers were sitting there analyzing all of the data. We would then go into maintenance. We would then go into, a situation on a track that was a bit of a problem. And then through all of this, we were able to then showcase what was happening, how the technology is being used in real life situations. So, we were doing several different activations. We had 3 or 4 that were going on within this experience zone, where people could come and basically immerse themselves within this technology. We then had breakout sessions. So, I mean, you can see one here on the right-hand side, the government session. So anyone who was involved in the government sector could then break away into a section with specialists that could come in from all over the world, talk about what's happening in this region, and talk about what's happening, and how technology is, but also not so much how technology is changing, but also talking about what's impacting these different businesses and these different elements and these different areas. And I guess for us, it was such an exciting campaign to work on, because it gave us the scope to be able to create an experience that wasn't just turn up to an event, listen to someone speak, and then go again. So, this was an experience that was created through the entire day. We had a keynote, we had what we call lock notes, so someone incredible who came and then created this experience at the end, which sort of wrapped everything up. And then, the feedback that we got from this event, because it was a change and a departure from what Microsoft had traditionally done, was so strong. And then, through that, there were conversations that were able to be created about, where Microsoft is positioning itself in this marketplace, but also it gave, all of Microsoft's partners and sales team and everyone who was engaging in that event something to talk about, something to use, and a conversation starter. So, I know that from an ROI perspective, it was one of the most successful events that they've run. And, for us, an incredible experience to be able to create on such a large scale. But talking about large scale, it doesn't necessarily need to cost a fortune. So, when we're talking about engagement, we're talking about, just doing something really, really, really simple. So a store called Greg's over in the UK, they basically changed their logo and they turned it backwards so that if you were taking a selfie, all of a sudden their logo appears the right way around in your selfies. So something as simple as this didn't cost a fortune and had such a high social media presence, and everyone's talking about the brand and everyone's talking about something just really simple but really clever, and it starts people engaging with your brand, talking about your brand, and doing something that is a little bit different does in the right way, can create a really great sense of engagement with consumers as well. So it's about half an hour in, so I just wanted to talk a little bit more about now about engagement, and I want to talk about ROI because that's a really critical part as well in how we measure brand engagement. So I'll probably spend the next 10 minutes on that, and then I think I'd like to be able to answer any questions that you've got and then be able to help and assist in any way. So get the basics right. At the end of the day, customers just want a great experience. They want to feel important, they want to know that it's all about them. Personalization, as we've seen, is so critical. They want it to be fast, and I think, as I said, the internet and technology has taught us that, we can have things instantly. They want it to be simple, they want it to be convenient, they want it to be able to fit within their life plans and make it easy for them. And they want it with a smile. This very friendly service and helpful employees is, something that is missed so often. And, when we're talking about fixing problems, I think I read a stat the other day that 88% of email or written communication is misinterpreted, which is an absolutely scary stat. So if you think about how many times are you responding to somebody on an email via some type of written communication, where just sometimes it's just as easy to pick up a phone. And I think the best way to solve an issue is via a phone call or a face-to-face opportunity to discuss it, call it out, discuss it, have open dialogue. And this is where we talk about being vulnerable, and we talk about, and if anyone's read or seen any of Brené Brown's work, this whole movement around being vulnerable and getting some of our leaders to be vulnerable is actually a really critical piece, I think, to us when we're talking about being honest, having empathy, and acting with integrity. So moving on to measuring and engagement, because at the end of the day, someone's got to pay for all of this. So, we find that whilst it's great to do these campaigns, there has to be a level of measurement. There also has to be a level of ROI, and there has to be a sense of, what did we get out of this? So it all depends on what the goal and what you're trying to achieve. So, with measurement and with how we create the measurement metrics that we put together with any campaign that we do, and there are so many different models that we can use and choose to create our measurement. There are some really simple things that we can do, and there's some really complex things we can do. So, and if we are using digital platforms, there are all sorts of algorithms that give us, very scientific ways to measure. However, if it's an event, it might be the number of attendees, visit, or participants. You can measure by number of interactions, samples, or giveaways. Things like dwell time. What are the times that people walk into a stand or an expo that you might be doing? Dwell time on your, whether it's your own website. you can look at through Google Analytics, you can have a look at your sites and you can start to be, you can actually see where people are going, where people are coming from, how long they're spending on particular pages. And we do the same type of thing when we're looking at activations that we're creating. How long are people spending there? And not necessarily through so if you're having your makeup done, we know that it's going to take you 25 minutes to have your makeup done, etc. But if you're creating an experience on a stand, or you're creating an expo or something where people are coming on and engaging with you, how long are they spending there, and what are they doing while they're there, and what are the things that are ticking their boxes, which means that we can then take some of that learning and look at what we're doing for the next campaign and the campaign that sits behind that. And then obviously sales. So, sales that are generated within a defined time, either at that experience or after the experience, or, through the experience that you've created. So, the model might be, what the average sales were before you were creating something, what you actually sold on the day, and then what sits behind that. So, we see a lot of bell curves with some of the work that we're doing as well. So whether it be a sweepstake or competition, you get this super high level of engagement, but what we're actually looking for is for that curve to flick up, but then also peter down, but then for the baseline to be incrementally higher. So we really need to think about how do we create longevity in that campaign that we're creating. So not only do we get that initial lift, how are we going to create that longevity? Redemptions or incentives or exclusive offers, again, we know that consumers love getting things for free. So, if we're going to be doing something, how are we creating that is not just an experience? If we're giving cash away, how do you make it a brand experience, not just a hi, we're just going to give you, bucket loads of cash. Number of photos taken, sent or downloaded, again, if we're talking about amplifying our different campaigns, we've got ways to set up a measure of this. I've actually written a whole article about this, and I can go on hours and hours about measurement, because I think it's such a critical piece of what we're trying to do. Because whilst we're doing this, we're not going to be able to continue to create these experiences unless we're measuring them, unless we're delivering them against KPIs. But I think it's super important that we need to set up all of our objectives from the very, very, very beginning of these campaigns. And that goes to when we're creating them as well, because whilst clients might come into us and say, we want to do a such and such campaign, that might not be the right thing for them. It might not be the right thing for the brand. And again, the honest and the acting with integrity piece is that's not going to work. That's not going to work for you. Whilst I'm really happy to take your money, it's not going to work for you. Or we really should be doing this instead. Or in my humble experience, this is how we should be going. So, we create a whole strategy around this experience, and it has so many different elements into it as well. So ROI and measurement is such a critical piece of this too. So takeaways, brands need to get the basics right. And as I said, the most important elements to consumers, for consumers, is this personalization, this speed, this convenience, this friendly service, this helpful employees. But you've got to remember that they want that up-to-date technology. They want to be seen to be, for you to be using technology as well, but also there's unique experience. It needs to provide basic benefits, and it's not just for the sake of it. So whilst we are looking at how we do this, it's about how we create experiences and that whole remembering, your brand and that emotional connection with your brand and getting your consumers to act. Again, technology isn't a solution, it's a tool, and it's not there to solve our customers' problems. It's about how we use technology to the best of our to our advantage, and then to create and drive that future business and that incredible customer experience. And this, I think, is really critical as well. You don't actually need to create the wheel. We know what works. We know what ticks the boxes for consumers. There's a lot of single-minded focus on what's in it for me. But, if we think about using a little bit of science here as well, it doesn't have to be something they haven't seen before. It's it's the core things that matter, and those certainly meet those expectations. And experience is strategy. Customers want good experience with their brands, but they don't always get them. And given how many customers will leave upon, will leave with a brand interaction. And this is the other thing, and again, the stats around customers leaving and choosing not to further purchase brands or engage with brands. We know that people just walk away without saying anything or doing anything. Giving our customers an opportunity to have a dialogue with us is actually super important as well, because if they don't like what they're seeing, then we need to know about it as brands and as marketers and as people with businesses. We certainly need to know about it. Personalization is an appreciated customer experience attitude, and I think we're seeing more and more and more of that in our marketplace. And it's not just monogramming something. It's about how we can make that experience, or how we can make that what they're doing with that engagement, and how you can make someone feel special as they walk away. So I'm now going to open up. So we're sitting at about 8:40, so we've got a little bit of time. So Sarah, I might open it up to you to facilitate questions now for the next little while.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. And I just wanted to remind everyone, I see a couple people that have the virtual hands raised. Just as a reminder, I cannot give you access to ask a question if your hand is raised. If you have a question, you'll need to type it in the chat box, and then it'll go to me, and then I can facilitate. So I think there are a couple more questions that are pending. So just as FYI, that's how we kind of work that out. So as you guys click those over, again, thank you, Alicia. So the first question that I have is, how do you scale and still provide human interaction?
I'm sorry, I missed your first word.
No, you're good. How do you scale as a business and still provide that human interaction?
So this is something that, in my business, we're scaling at the moment, and, we sort of went from 5 people to we're almost 15 people at the moment. And, I'm not sure, it depends on the size of the scale that you're looking at. I think it's about having your customers in and as the focus point. So, I think if you're talking about getting the key people involved in your business involved with your customers as well. So you've got to make sure that you don't forget that the customers were there in the first place, the ones that are sort of enabling you to scale. But there's this human interaction. It's about, getting your staff engaged with your customers. Again, using technology as a platform, but then don't forgetting that human interaction is so critically important. So, if we're talking about personalization as well, people like to hear from you. People like to know that the owner is still involved. People like to know that the key players within the business are still involved as well. So I think whilst we are scaling, it's about making sure that your organization is living the values that you believe as a business owner is critically important, that you are communicating that, but also that you're remembering that not only your customers, you need to have that human interaction with your customers, but you also need to have that human interaction and communication with your staff. So again, you may need to bring in someone to help with modeling of communication skills and all of those types of things. So it depends on how big you're talking about when you're talking about scale. It's kind of difficult to answer other than that.
Great, thank you. And actually another question came in that is similar, but kind of speaks to something different, which is, how do we engage in a multi-product and multi-service company while still trying to grow a strong brand?
So what was the first word? Sorry, I'm missing a few words here.
How do you engage in a multi-product and multi-service company while still trying to grow a strong brand?
A strong brand. So are we talking about the brand as the multi-brand or the master brand, or are we talking about various different brands?
So I can ask Emilio Amoa to clarify if we want. From what I understand, master brand is what she says.
Master brand, okay.
So I think yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So I guess it's interesting. So some work that we've done with P&O, and this might be relevant in this instance. So they have 7 individual cruise lines, and whilst every individual cruise line has its own brand and its own identity, we've had to create some work around a master brand. So, you know, what is that master brand? What does that master brand stand for? How does every single individual brand fit underneath that master brand? And, you know, the master brand that was created for, you know, the Carnival, P&O, Cunard, cruise lines was World Leading Cruise Lines. So we used that as a master brand, and then that master brand, from there we had every individual identity of every brand. But when we do major trade shows for something like P&O, we had to integrate all of those brands within the master brand, and that's a really difficult thing to do, because you have a, you know, as I said, you have a brand identity for every single brand, but then you also have that master brand. So, you know, what we created in that master brand was, you know, this is basically what's the way to describe it? So the master brand, World Leading Cruise Lines, it was all around then how they fit into it, what the different target markets were, and how they feed into that master brand. Again, it's the values of that master brand, it's the mission of that master brand, and then how everything sits underneath that as well. So, you know, that was a lot of around that was on, you know, simple identity pieces, and then also then how it relates to the master brand.
Great, thank you so much. Another question that we have is, do you have any recommendations for softwares to help us track engagement and metrics?
It depends on what you're trying to measure. So, can we ask the question? So, what are we measuring? Is it like online? Are we measuring online engagement? Are we measuring?
So, Ijoma, I think is how you pronounce that name. Can you clarify potentially? So I don't see, so I'll see if she can respond to clarify, but I think in reference to, you were talking about how to measure impact, right? So some of those key indicator factors, whether that's different followers or, you know, I think you mentioned even swag. So there's lots of different ways you can, you know, track measurements. So is there kind of a software, even from like, I think you mentioned Google Analytics being one of them, which can be free. So I think the question is alluding to kind of in a larger scale, is there a software that you guys use from a marketing perspective to kind of track your KPIs?
Yeah, so I mean, we use, there's lots of online tools that are available. We use different ones for different campaigns, but we've created more of a bespoke campaign because every single campaign that we measure is so different. So there isn't any software that I've found or that we've ended up using. I mean, we use different platforms for different clients. You know, we use certain when we're creating platforms for events for Microsoft. We use a company here in Australia that creates bespoke sites for us that have measurement tools built into the back of it. So, you know, again, if we're doing a campaign where consumers are entering a competition, we have bespoke set of tools that are built into a purpose-built microsite that captures all of this data for us. And the tracking is quite extensive. You know, we can tell from right down to, you know, time of day, audience, you know, some really quite detailed measurement, but that's all bespoke, that's all created bespoke. Is there a piece of software that I know about? No, because everything is so different to what everything that we, you know, that we create is different.
Great, thank you. A couple comments just saying, thank you, excellent presentation. Another comment saying, very helpful, so appreciated. We have one question that says, can you please send through the link to your LinkedIn article? And Alicia, if you want to send that over to me, there will be a follow-up email after this that includes the link to this recorded webinar, and I'm happy to include the link to that article as well if you want to send that over.
Fantastic, I'll do that.
Great. Okay. A couple more thank yous. I have learned so much. Very high praise for you, Alicia. And of course, Alicia did put her contact information here at the end. So people who have any other questions that aren't going to ask now can always follow up. But I'll just give one more quick opportunity. Is there any other questions that anyone wants to ask before we wrap things up? Okay. Alicia, anything else you wanted to say before we let everyone go?
No, as I said, I'm really happy to take questions offline. So, Sarah, I'll send you the copy to the LinkedIn article. And there's also another bunch of articles as well that we've written. So, a couple of things to look at, which would be interesting to look at is, the science of consumer promotions, the a little bit of work around, some engagement work that we've done as well. So there's a whole lot of stuff on our website, blog posts that you can look at. We've got a resources page there, so you can have a look. Plus also on LinkedIn, we tend to post these things on LinkedIn. So we just try and give people opportunities to learn as well. I think, so many agencies tend to keep their IP sort of very close to the chest, whereas we tend to like to help people. So there's lots of different opportunities to read different articles, to find out more information. But as I said, I'm really happy to answer questions or things that can, anyone who wants to send, me an email at alicia@april5.com.au.
Great. Thank you again, Alicia. It's very appreciated. And I've said this once or twice, so I'll say it one more time, which is if you were able to take extension, this will be sent over to all of the registrants so we can make sure that's done. And actually, I do have one other question. Oh, nope, just a comment saying thank you very much. We have a lot of thank yous. So thank you for coming. Very appreciated, Alicia. Thank you for your time. And we hope that you join us again for another one of our webinars. We'll have another one in 2 weeks. So keep on the lookout. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.